When talking about the genocide of Azerbaijanis, we are talking about the massacres committed by Armenian military forces in March 1918. The massacres committed in Baku, Shamakhı, Guba, Göyçay, Kürdemir, Salyan, Lankaran, and other regions of Azerbaijan. Thousands of Azerbaijanis were killed in 3 days of slaughter at the end of March 1918, when Armenian nationalists went on the rampage in Baku. The history of the policy of genocide committed by Armenian nationalists against the Azerbaijani people dates back to the beginning of the 18th century. At that time, the Tsarist Russia, which was expanding its territory to the South Caucasus, used the Armenians as a tool, enticing them with the promise of creating an Armenian national state in the Caucasus. The decree issued on behalf of Peter I, the Tsar Peter I, on November 10, 1724, provided for the creation of all conditions for the settlement of Armenians in the seized lands in Baku and elsewhere in Azerbaijan. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Armenians committed horrific massacres against Azerbaijanis in various regions of Azerbaijan in order to implement their insidious policies and establish the Armenian state in the historical territory of Azerbaijan. As a result of the intermittent but deliberate and planned policy of genocide by the Armenians, thousands of innocent Azerbaijanis were brutally killed, their houses burned, and their property looted. Yes, thousands of innocent Azerbaijanis were brutally killed. Thousands became refugees, their houses burned, and their property looted. Also, the other Armenians settled in Azerbaijan were a minority. They managed to create an administrative division under the auspices of their patrons. This laid the foundation for the policy of expelling and destroying Azerbaijanis from their lands. Armenian history was falsified and Azerbaijan's history was distorted in order to dress up the idea of a fictitious Great Armenia. Inspired by these artificial fantasies, Armenian aggressors carried out more ruthless, bloody actions against Azerbaijanis in the 20th century. The Armenian atrocities that began in Baku have spread throughout Azerbaijan. Hundreds of settlements were destroyed. Thousands of Azerbaijanis were brutally killed. The first massacre of Azerbaijanis in the 20th century by Armenians living in the illusion of a great Armenia took place in 1905 to 1907. At that time, thousands of Azerbaijanis were ruthlessly killed by Armenians in Baku, Nakhchivan, Zangezur, Yerevan, and other historical Azerbaijani lands. Only from December 1917 to March 1918, with the active participation of Armenian troops under the leadership of Andranik, 32 villages in Yerevan district, Yerevan, now Yerevan, 84 villages in Echmedin district, 7 villages in Nur Bayazid district. A total of 197 villages were destroyed. Their residents were killed or were driven from their homes, their property looted, and their homes destroyed. Andrenik Ozanyan was an Armenian general. He was an Armenian military commander and statesman. Andrenik was best known as Fedai. He was a key figure of the extremist Armenian national movement. From the late 19th century to the early 20th century, Andrenik was one of the main Armenian leaders of military efforts for the independence of Armenia. Fedai, they were Armenian irregular units or Armenian militia, according to the Armenian nationalists. It was actually a bandit group, terrorist group, who murdered Kurdish people, Turkish people, and Azerbaijani people. Their goal was to gain Armenian autonomy, according to the ideology of Armenakans, and the goal of Dashnaks and Hanchaks Armenians was to gain independence. So depending on their ideology, then depending on the current situation in the region. The Armenian term Fedai is ultimately derived from the Arabic Fedayan, literally meaning those who sacrifice, like Hamas today or Al-Qaeda today. Bolshevik revolution brought chaos and terror in the region, in the whole Caucasus. The Dashnaks and other Armenian nationalist parties took advantage of the disintegration of the Russian Empire when the Tsarist government was overthrown in the revolution of February 1918 and of the Bolshevik seizure of power in October Revolution. They used the harsh revolutionary ideas to promote their nationalist agenda. In 1918 to 1920, Armenians perpetrate massacres, violence, and terror against Azerbaijanis in Baku and throughout the Caucasus, plundering their property. They started in Baku in 1905. The massacre of 1918 was prepared more skillfully and implemented more ruthlessly than the 1905 attacks. The Bolsheviks' victory in Russia and the withdrawal of Russian troops from the battlefields of World War I opened the way for the massacre. The Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin, appointed Stepan Shahumyan commissar of the Transcaucasus. Shahumyan was a Baku Armenian and Dashnak masquerading as a Bolshevik. When Shahumyan's attempt to implement his mandate in Tbilisi failed, he returned to Baku. He seized absolute power in Baku and international proletarian city, Baku, after the collapse of the Russian Empire. Shahumyan used his position to fight the Azerbaijanis. He took advantage of Armenian officers and soldiers amongst the Russian troops who were returning from the front to Azerbaijan and used them in his anti-Azerbaijani campaign. Since then, disguising as fighting counter-revolutionary elements, the Baku Commune, Baku Soviet, under the leadership of the Dashnak Bolshevik Shahumyan, has embarked on a despicable plan to rid Baku of Azerbaijanis. After October 1917 revolution, 1917 coup, the Armenians began to realize their claims under the Bolshevik flag. In March 1918, Stepan Shaumian was appointed extraordinary commissioner of the Caucasus and sent to Baku. As a result of the genocide against Azerbaijanis by Baku Soviet troops and Dashnak Armenian armed groups in Baku and various regions of Baku province, as well as in Karabakh, Nakhchivan, Shamakh, Guba, Khachmaz, Lankaran, Salyan, Zangezur, and other regions from March 30 to April 3, 1918, according to the official sources, tens of thousands of Azerbaijanis were killed precisely because of their ethnic and religious affiliation, being Azerbaijani Turks, and Azerbaijani settlements, historical monuments, mosques, and cemeteries were destroyed. Shaumian painted slaughter as struggle for Soviet power. On 13 April 1918, in a letter to the Soviet People's Commissars in Moscow, Stepan Shaumian attempted to give a political context to the March attacks by Armenians on Azerbaijanis. He claimed that the attacks were the result of the Armenians' loyalty to the Soviet government and not of their national prejudice. Shaumian wrote, "The Soviet Red Army, our international Red Army, and the Red Fleet, which we built in a short period, and Armenian national divisions were fighting the Muslim Wild Division, led by the Musavat Party, the Azerbaijani Liberal Party, and armed Muslim gangs." Stepan Shaumian, in the book Selection, the second part, publishing 1978. This brief quotation shows how Shaumian concealed his Armenian nationalist Dashnak nature in the cloak of Bolshevism, describing the slaughter of Azerbaijanis as a struggle for Soviet government. In his letter, Shaumian described his people as real doves of peace and the Azerbaijanis as butchers. This is real hypocrisy and deception. As a matter of fact, the Muslims did not have any armed forces or weapons. Those whom Shaumian described as fighters of Soviet armed divisions were in fact Armenian Dashnaks and nationalists pretending to be Bolsheviks. Shaumian boasted about the Armenian brutality against Azerbaijanis. Quotation, "We have gained brilliant results in the battles. The enemy has been utterly annihilated. We forced conditions on them and they signed them." Shaumian, in the same book, the second part, page 259. Socialist Stepan Shaumian shamelessly justified the involvement of the armed forces of the Armenian Dashnak Party in the slaughter of Azerbaijanis in Baku. Shaumian wrote in his letter to Moscow, quotation, "The presence of national divisions has partly characterized the civil war as a national massacre, but it was impossible to do otherwise. We did it on purpose. Poor Muslim people have suffered a great deal, but have now come together with the Bolsheviks and Soviets. Stepan Shalmyan, the same book, page 260. The letter reveals some interesting information. Shalmyan wrote that units of Red Guards, including Armenian, Muslim, and Russian workers, defended the oil fields of Baku from attack from the nearby Muslim villages. Soviet soldiers of other nationalities were driven away by Shalmyan under the pretext of defending the oil fields and the city. On March 31st, 1918, the massacre of Azerbaijanis began in Baku. 6,000 armed soldiers of the Baku Soviet, as well as 4,000 armed groups of the Dashnagtitude Party, took part in the massacre of peaceful Azerbaijanis. During the three-day massacre, Armenian militants, with the help of the Bolsheviks, raided neighborhoods inhabited by Azerbaijanis, killing everyone from children to adults. A German named Kollner, who witnessed those terrible days in Baku, wrote about the events in Baku in 1925 in his book. Armenians invade the Muslim, Azerbaijanis neighborhoods, kill everyone, cut them with swords, and pierce them with bayonets. A few days after the massacre, the ears and noses of the bodies of 87 Azerbaijanis removed from a pit were cut off, their stomachs were torn, and their genitals were cut. Armenians did not feel sorry for children, nor did they feel sorry for the elderly. After the establishment of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic in May 1918, special attention was paid to the investigation of the events of March 1918. On July 15, 1918, the Council of Ministers of Azerbaijan Democratic Republic established the Extraordinary Commission to a commission of inquiry to investigate this tragedy. According to the materials of the Extraordinary Commission of Inquiry, established by the government of the Azerbaijan Democratic Republic, Armenian bandits who committed genocide against Azerbaijanis killed about 8,000 civilians in Shamakh only. 28 villages of Javanshir district, 17 villages of Jabrail district were completely destroyed together with the population. Near Gyumri region of Azerbaijan, Gyumri, 3,000 Azerbaijanis, mostly women, children, and the elderly, were ambushed and killed. Armenian armed groups set fire to several villages in Nakhchivan district of Azerbaijan. 115 Azerbaijani villages were destroyed in Zangezur district. 3,257 men, 2,276 women, and 2,196 children were killed. In total, 10,068 Azerbaijanis were killed or injured in Zangezur district only, and 50,000 Azerbaijanis became refugees. One 135,000 Azerbaijanis living in 199 villages of Yerevan province, now Yerevan, were killed and the villages were destroyed. Armenian armed groups then marched on Karabakh, destroying 150 villages, in the mountainous part of Karabakh between 1918 and 20, and destroying their population. In 1919 to 1920, March 31 was marked as a national day of mourning by the Azerbaijani Democratic Republic. In fact, this was the first attempt in history to give a political assessment to the genocide against Azerbaijanis and the occupation of Azerbaijani lands, which lasted more than a century. Important work was done to study that history. Many works were written and many works were translated, has been translated into foreign languages. Thanks to research in this area, in recent years, a large number of new facts and documents have been collected. The mass grave found in Guba is one of the bloodiest episodes of this tragedy. In April-May period 1918, 167 villages were completely destroyed in Guba district alone. The Guba Genocide Cemetery was discovered on April 1st, 2007, during excavations in the area. In 2009, the Cabinet of Ministers of the Republic of Azerbaijan approved an action plan to perpetuate the memory of the victims of the massacre in Guba region. The Cabinet of Ministers decided to erect a monumental memorial complex and carry out landscaping work in the area where the mass grave is located. The Guba Genocide Memorial Complex, established in the area, was inaugurated on September 18, 2013. During the investigation, it was established that along with Azerbaijanis, representatives of Lezgi minority people of Azerbaijan, Lezgi, Jewish people, Tat people, and other ethnic groups living in Guba were ruthlessly killed and buried in the cemetery. Rest them in peace.